In this video, we're going to look at various angles in radian form and degree form and determine which quadrant of the coordinate plane the terminal side of the angle falls in. Remember, the terminal side is the ending side. Most of our angles for now are going to start right here on the positive side of the x-axis. And if they're positive, remember they're going to open up and go counterclockwise. If they're negative, they're going to open down and go clockwise. So before we start doing this, let's go ahead and label the important parts of our coordinate plane in degrees first, and then we'll go back and label them in radians. Starting right here on the positive side of the x-axis, that's 0 degrees. Going up is 90 degrees. To the left is 180 degrees. To the bottom is 270 degrees. And then when we get back to where we started, we've made a full revolution. That's 360 degrees. Okay, in radians, the right side is 0 radians. 90 degrees is the same as pi halves radians. 180 degrees is pi radians. 270 degrees is 3 pi halves radians. And if we go back to where we've started and we've made a full revolution, remember that that's 2 pi radians. Another thing that's good for us to do is look at these radian values with the pi already included. And so we'll get a decimal answer because that'll help us on some angles that are given in decimal form. So if I type pi halves in my calculator, that's 1.57. So pi halves is also 1.57 radians. Pi we know is 3.14, so I'm going to put 3.14 here. 3 pi halves in the calculator is 4.71. And then if we're back to 2 pi is 6.28 radians. So that'll help us with our radians where the pi has already been included. Okay, also we need to review which quadrants are which. The top right quadrant is quadrant 1, and then you go counterclockwise from there. This is quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And we typically give quadrants in Roman numerals. Okay, so let's look at number 1. 97 degrees. So I'm going to use my degrees. I'm starting here. If I'm going to 97, that means I've opened up 90 degrees, and I'm going to go 7 degrees more, but I haven't reached 180 yet. So I'm going to land in quadrant 2. Okay, 421. Our coordinate plane so far is only labeled to 360 degrees. So whenever our angle is either too small or too large for what we have, our circle goes from 0 to 360 or from 0 to 2 pi. So if we're given something negative, it's too small. If we're given something greater than 360 or greater than 2 pi, it's too large. So what we want to do to get this angle in the range that we want is we're going to use coterminal angles. Remember, coterminal angles are when you either add or subtract a full revolution. So it'll either be adding or subtracting 360 or adding or subtracting 2 pi, depending on if your angle's in degrees or radians. So since I'm in degrees and 421 is too big, I'm going to subtract 360 degrees from 421, which is going to give us 61 degrees. So this is the angle I really want to think about, 61 degrees. So if I'm starting at 0 and I'm going in the positive direction, 61 degrees, I haven't reached 90 yet, so I'm still in quadrant 1. All right, negative 115, negative 115 degrees. This angle's too small. Our angles need to be between 0 and 360, so I'm going to add a revolution. So I'm going to add 360 to negative 115. So if you type that in your calculator, you get 245 degrees. So I'm going to use 245 degrees to get my answer. So I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to go through 90. I'm going to go past 180. But I'm not going to reach 270 yet, so 245 falls over here in quadrant 3. All right, for number 4, we're just given 2 pi thirds. And remember, if we don't have a degree symbol, that's assumed to be in radians, so 2 pi thirds radians. Since my pi is written in my angle, I'm going to do best to find my answer by looking at these that have the pi's in them already. So if I ignore the pi for a second and just look at 2/3, I have to decide, where does 2/3 fall? It's definitely greater than 0. It's greater than 1/2. But is it a whole pi? 2/3 is less than 1 whole. So it's greater than 1/2, but less than 1 whole. So 2/3 falls over here in quadrant 2. Okay, 9/5. All right, again, I'm going to look at my angles that have pi's in them, but I'm going to ignore the pi for a second and just think of 9/5. 9/5 is greater than 0. 9/5 is greater than 1/2. Remember, there's an understood 1 here in front of that pi. Greater than 1/2. 9/5 is greater than 1. I know it's greater than 1 because 9's bigger than 5. So I'm greater than 1. 3/2 is the same as 1.5. Now, 9/5 is still bigger than 1.5, still larger than 1.5. So I'm going past that. It is not quite 2 yet. For it to be 2, it would have to be 10/5. So I know I'm over here in quadrant 4. Now that can be a little bit confusing. So another way to think of it, if you didn't know that 9/5 was greater than 3/2, just see what it is as a decimal. 9 divided by 5 is 1.8, where 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So I know I've gone past 3/2. All right, number 6 is -6/7. Okay, that's a negative angle. That's too small. I need to get that in positive angle form. So I'm going to add a revolution. But instead of 360, I'm going to add 2 pi since I'm in radians. So remember, when you type that in the calculator, since they both have a pi in them already, it's kind of like you're combining like terms. Don't include the pi. Type -6/7 plus 2, and then change that to fraction form. And it's 8/7. So 8/7 is what I'm really dealing with. All right, so 8/7 is bigger than 1/2. It's also bigger than a whole. 7/7 would be 1 whole. So if I'm at 8/7, I'm past a whole. But have I reached 3/2 yet? Remember, 3/2 is the same as 1.5. 8/7 is only 1.1, so I haven't reached 3/2 yet. I'm over here in quadrant 3. Okay, my last 3 angles are still radians because I don't see any degree symbols on them, but they don't have pi's with them, which means the pi's have already been included in these angles. So my best bet to figure out what quadrant these are in is to look at my decimal angles that I wrote down. Okay, so 3. 3 is greater than 1.57, but not quite 3.14. So I'm in quadrant 2. 4.1. Start here. I'm greater than 1.57, greater than 3.14, but I have not reached 4.71 yet. So I'm down here in quadrant 3. All right, -5.9. We don't like negative angles. We want to change that to a positive angle by adding a full revolution. Remember, adding a revolution is adding 2 pi to it since we're in radian form. So I have -5.9, and I'm going to add 2 pi. I'm actually going to type the pi in. Since the pi was already included in this number, I've got it included in that one as well. So I get 0.38. Okay, so if I'm starting at 0, 0.38 is smaller than 1.57, so I haven't even passed 90 degrees yet. I'm still over here in quadrant 1.